I was halfway through a cup of lukewarm coffee, the kind that tastes like regret, when Olivia Mason summoned me to her office. It was a Tuesday morning, the air thick with the hum of machinery at Mason Industries, where I'd poured 15 years of my life into keeping the gears turning. I'm Daniel Carter, 55, the guy who made sure every lathe, every press, every damn bolt in this Indianapolis factory worked like a Swiss watch. I walked in expecting another pointless meeting about synergy or whatever buzzword Olivia had picked up from her MBA. Instead, she hit me with a sledgehammer. "Daniel, we don't need guys like you holding us back," she said, her voice sharp as a razor, eyes barely lifting from her laptop. She flicked her wrist like she was shooing a stray dog. "You're done. HR will handle the paperwork." Just like that, 15 years, gone. No warning, no reason. Just a 30-year-old with a corner office and a chip on her shoulder, cutting me loose like I was dead weight. My stomach churned, a mix of shock and bile, but my face stayed stone. I'd learned long ago to keep my cards close. Olivia was George Mason's daughter, the old man who built this company from a garage into a $25 million operation. George, 72, had been my mentor, my rock, the guy who saw something in me when I was just a laid-off mechanic with a community college degree. He'd made me operations manager, trusted me to run the show. Now his daughter, fresh off a stint in Miami, was torching everything we'd built. Her words echoed in my skull, holding us back, like I was some rusted part she could toss in a scrap heap. I stood there, hands in my pockets, feeling the weight of my keys, the worn leather of my wallet, grounding me as the room spun. Betrayal doesn't just sting, it's a gut punch that leaves you gasping. I'd trained half the floor, hired kids straight out of high school, turned them into machinists with mortgages and minivans. I'd stayed late to fix breakdowns, skipped vacations to meet deadlines, all for this company, for George. And now this, my jaw tightened, but I didn't flinch. Showing weakness to Olivia would be like bleeding in front of a shark. The worst part wasn't her words, it was the silence that followed. The office, all glass and steel, felt like a cage. Her assistant avoided my eyes, pretending to type. The hum of the factory floor, my domain for over a decade, droned through the walls, mocking me. I wanted to slam the door, to tell her she'd crash this place into the ground without us old guys. But I didn't. I just nodded, a single sharp jerk of my head, and walked out. My boots echoed on the polished floor, each step a reminder of what I'd lost. As I passed the production line, I saw Tommy, a welder I'd mentored, glance up then look away. Nobody said a word. 15 years, and it ended with a cardboard box waiting for me at my desk. My chest burned, not with tears, hell no, but with something heavier. Olivia didn't just fire me, she erased me. And deep down, I knew this wasn't just about me. She was coming for everyone who'd built this place with George. The echo of my boots faded as I reached my desk, a battered metal relic tucked in the corner of Mason Industries' administrative wing. The cardboard box sat there like a cheap coffin, waiting for the remnants of my 15 years. I didn't yell or curse Olivia's name. I didn't have the energy to rage. My insides felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything that made me Daniel Carter, 55, the guy who kept this factory alive. All that was left was a dull ache, a weight pressing my ribs, urging me to move, to do something. But I didn't. I opened the top drawer, pulling out a chipped coffee mug my daughter Sarah gave me for Father's Day a decade ago. It had a cartoon wrench and the words, "Fixer of all things." I set it in the box, careful not to crack it. Next came a dog-eared maintenance manual I'd annotated over the years, its pages soft from use. Then a keychain from my son, Ethan, shaped like a tiny gear, a gift from his first engineering job. Each item landed with a soft thud, a quiet requiem for the life I'd built here. The younger staff, faces I knew from their first nervous interviews, kept their heads down, their keyboards clacking to fill the silence. Nobody met my eyes. I didn't blame them. Loyalty's a hard sell when the boss's daughter wields the axe. My hands moved mechanically, sorting papers, tossing outdated schedules into the trash. I unplugged my desk lamp, coiling the cord with precision, the way I'd wrap hydraulic lines on the shop floor. Every motion was deliberate, a tether to keep me from unraveling. My mind screamed to confront Olivia, to demand answers, but my body refused. It knew better. Words wouldn't undo her decision. They'd only give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I lifted the box, lighter than it should have been for 15 years, and carried it through the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting shadows that stretched too long. My truck waited in the lot, a '98 Ford F-150, its paint chipped but engine purring like a loyal dog. I slid the box onto the passenger seat, next to a half-empty pack of gum and a crumpled gas receipt. The door creaked as I shut it, sealing away the last piece of Mason Industries I'd touch. I climbed in, gripped the steering wheel, and stared at the factory through the windshield. The brick building loomed, its smokestacks idle today, a giant asleep. I'd spent countless nights here, troubleshooting breakdowns, sharing beers with George after a tough shift. Now it felt like a stranger's house. My knuckles whitened, not from anger, but from the effort to hold myself together. I wasn't ready to feel the full weight of this. Not yet. I turned the key, the engine rumbling to life. The radio crackled, some country song about losing everything but your pride. I switched it off. Silence suited me better. As I pulled out of the lot, the rearview mirror caught the factory shrinking, a monument to my past. I didn't speed off or burn rubber. I just drove, the road stretching ahead, empty as my thoughts. Somewhere deep, a spark flickered. Not hope, not yet, but a stubborn refusal to let Olivia's knife be the end of me. I'd figure out what came next. I always did. The highway blurred past my truck's windows, a gray ribbon under the Indianapolis sky. But my mind was elsewhere, dragged back to years that felt like another man's life. I'm Daniel Carter, 55, and as I gripped the wheel, memories of Mason Industries before Olivia's wrecking ball clawed their way up, sharp and uninvited. The factory wasn't just a job. It was where I became someone, where George Mason, 72, saw a spark in a washed-up mechanic and gave him a shot. Those days, now distant, burned in my chest, a mix of warmth and grief for what I'd lost. I could still see George in his worn flannel, standing on the shop floor, pointing at a temperamental press. "Daniel, you've got a knack for taming beasts," he'd said, his grin wide as he handed me a wrench. That was 15 years ago when I was 40, fresh off a layoff, scraping by on odd jobs. He didn't care about my thin resume. He saw my calloused hands and hired me on the spot. By year 2, he'd made me operations manager, trusting me to keep his empire humming. We'd work late, sharing greasy burgers from a diner down the road, talking about everything, baseball, his old Army days, my wife Ellen's garden. Ellen. God, her laugh could light up a room. When she got sick, George was the one who pulled me aside. "Take all the time you need," he'd said, his hand heavy on my shoulder. He rejigged my shifts so I could drive her to chemo, sit through endless hospital waits. One night after a long day, he showed up at our house with a casserole his wife made. No fanfare, just a nod. "Your family, Daniel." That's who George was, tough as nails, soft where it counted. I'd have run through walls for him. But then Olivia, his daughter 30, started showing up. She'd breeze in, all high heels and perfume, clutching a tablet like it held the secrets to the universe. I remember her first meeting, tossing out words like disruption while George's jaw tightened. He'd catch my eye, a silent she'll learn. But she didn't. She'd push for cheaper parts, quicker turnarounds, ignoring the quality that made Mason Industries a name. George would overrule her quietly later in his office. But I saw the strain in his face. "She's got big ideas," he told me once, staring out his window. His voice carried a weight, like he knew she'd outlast him. Those moments stung now, each one a thread in a tapestry I hadn't seen unraveling. Ellen's gone 4 years, George retired 3 months ago, and Olivia's in charge, slashing through everything we built. Driving home, the memories twisted like a knife. George's trust, Ellen's pride when I got promoted, the factory's pulse under my care. They clashed with the present, with Olivia's cold dismissal, leaving me raw. I wasn't just grieving a job. I was mourning a life, a bond, a promise that hard work meant something. The truck's engine growled as I neared my street, the past fading but not gone. I couldn't dwell here. Not now. Olivia's move wasn't random. It was calculated. And if I was going to survive this, I needed to stop looking back and start seeing what I'd missed. because something told me this betrayal ran deeper than a pink slip. My truck rumbled into the driveway, the engine's growl fading as I cut the ignition. The house, a modest ranch style I'd called a home for 20 years, loomed dark under the Indianapolis dusk. I'm Daniel Carter, 55, and as I sat there, the weight of Olivia's betrayal clung like damp air, stirring a gnawing suspicion. Something was off, had been for months. I hadn't wanted to see it, but now, with my career gutted, the signs I'd ignored flashed like warning lights, each one a crack in the foundation of Mason Industries. It started a year ago when Olivia, 30, began haunting the factory like a restless ghost patron saint of startups. She'd stride through the plant, her sleek ponytail swinging, spouting jargon about lean operations. I'd catch her eyeing the custom presses, machines I'd tuned to perfection, as if they were junkyard scrap. She'd scribble notes during an inspections, never asking questions, just smirking when I explained tolerances. Once she suggested outsourcing our precision components to a supplier in Asia. I shut it down, citing quality risks, but her eyes narrowed, like I'd insulted her personally. George, 72, wasn't blind to it. I'd see him linger after her presentations, his shoulders hunched, staring at the floor. "She's ambitious," he muttered one afternoon, polishing his glasses with a rag. His tone wasn't proud, it was wary. He'd always been a straight shooter, but when Olivia was around, he clammed up, letting her ramble about market pivots while his fingers twitched. I should have pressed him, but loyalty kept my mouth shut. Then came the budget cuts. Olivia slashed maintenance funds, claiming we could optimize with less. I fought it, showing her spreadsheets proving downtime costs, but she waved me off. "We're not in the 80s, Daniel." Machines started breaking down, nothing catastrophic, but enough to raise my hackles. I'd overhear her on calls, laughing, mentioning liquidating assets like it was a game. I told myself it was just talk, but my gut churned. The final straw was George's retirement. 3 months ago, he called me to his office, the air heavy with his cologne. He slid a new org chart across his desk, Olivia's name at the top. "She's ready," he said, but his eyes darted to the window, avoiding mine. My role was buried under layers of new titles. Consultants Olivia hired, kids fresh out of college. I nodded, but dread settled in, cold and heavy. George wasn't passing a torch. He was surrendering. Now, sitting in my truck, those moments stitched together into a pattern I'd been too stubborn to face. Olivia wasn't just reckless. She was dismantling everything George and I had built. My chest tightened, not with sadness, but with a restless itch, a need to dig deeper. I'd trusted George, believed in his vision. But Olivia? She was playing a different game, one I hadn't seen coming. I stepped out, the gravel crunching under my boots, and locked the truck. The night was quiet, but my mind raced. If Olivia was tearing down Mason Industries, I needed proof, something to confirm this wasn't just a power trip. The house key felt heavy in my hand as I walked to the door, resolve hardening. I'd been blind too long. Tomorrow, I'd start looking for answers. The front door creaked as I stepped into my house, the silence inside sharper than the Indianapolis night. I'm Daniel Carter, 55, and the sting of Olivia's betrayal pulsed like a bruise. But I wasn't about to let it define me. Last night's suspicions had solidified into a plan, a quiet counterstrike. I wasn't a guy for theatrics, never had been. But I'd be damned if I let Olivia, 30, gut Mason Industries and walk away clean. My kitchen table became my war room, and I moved with the precision of a man who'd spent decades fixing what others broke. I pulled my employment contract from a lockbox under the bed, its pages crisp despite years in storage. George, 72, had insisted on a clause back in '09. 2 years' salary if I was fired without cause. I read it twice. The legalese a lifeline. My next call was to Henry Walsh, 60, a lawyer friend who'd handled my wife's estate. "Send me the contract," he said, his voice gravelly over the phone. "If it's airtight, we've got leverage." I scanned the document and emailed it, my laptop's glow casting shadows on the wall. Next, I dug through old emails, saving performance reviews and memos praising my work. I backed them up on a thumb drive, stashing it in a safe at the back of my closet. If Olivia thought she could paint me as dead weight, she'd need more than her say-so. I checked my savings, enough to float me for a year, maybe two. I opened a new checking account online, routing my direct deposit there, just in case Mason Industries played dirty with my last paycheck. Then I reached out to William Crane, 65, owner of Apex Components, a rival firm across town. We'd swapped stories at industry conferences, and he'd once offered me a job. "You still open to a chat?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "Always, Daniel," he replied, his drawl warm. "Lunch tomorrow?" I agreed, knowing Apex could be my next move, or a way to hit back. I jotted down notes. Names of suppliers Olivia had alienated, clients she'd ignored. Knowledge was my weapon, and I'd spent 15 years amassing it. My final task was contacting Emma Thornton, 48, and Nathan Brooks, 50, two colleagues Olivia had axed. I texted them, "Check your contracts. Call Henry Walsh." Emma replied instantly, "Already on it. She's screwing us all." Nathan's response was curt, "Thanks. I'll call." Their anger fueled me, but I stayed focused, methodical. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about survival. As midnight loomed, I leaned back, the kitchen clock ticking like a metronome. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with clarity. Olivia's power grab wasn't just personal. It was a calculated dismantling of everything George built. I pictured her in that glass office, smirking, thinking she'd outsmarted us. But I'd seen her type before, cocky, sloppy, blind to the details. That was her weakness, and I'd exploit it. I shut my laptop, the screen's light fading. The house felt less empty now, filled with purpose. I wasn't fighting for a job anymore. I was fighting for the truth, for the people who'd trusted me, for the legacy I'd helped create. Tomorrow, I'd start digging, and Olivia wouldn't see me coming. The dawn light sliced through my kitchen blinds, casting stripes across the table where I'd spent the night plotting. I'm Daniel Carter, 55, and my resolve to outmaneuver Olivia, 30, burned hotter than the coffee in my mug. I'd laid the groundwork, contract secured, allies contacted, a lunch with William Crane set for noon. But as I sipped the bitter brew, a phone call from George, 72, shattered my focus, revealing a betrayal far uglier than I'd imagined. Mason Industries wasn't just being mismanaged, it was being bled dry. My phone buzzed, George's name flashing. I answered, bracing myself. "Daniel, she's gone too far," he said, his voice cracked with exhaustion. "Olivia fired half the senior team, Emma, Nathan, even old Pete from logistics." I gripped the phone, my pulse hammering. Pete was a lifer, 62, with hands that could calibrate a mill blindfolded. "She's claiming it's for efficiency," George added, "but I don't buy it." His words hung heavy, a confession of his failure to rein her in. I paced to the window, the neighborhood still asleep. Emma, 48, had texted me at 3 a.m. A zip file certificate. I opened it now on my laptop. Invoices, wire transfers, auction records. My breath caught. Olivia had sold off 3 CNC machines, custom rigs worth $1 million each, for pennies to a shell company in Miami. The payments funneled to an account labeled Ohm Consulting. Olivia Mason. She wasn't just cutting costs. She was stripping the company bare, pocketing the profits while the factory limped along. I scrolled further, my jaw tightening. An email chain showed Olivia instructing her assistant to prioritize cash flow over client orders. Another document listed asset liquidation plans for the welding bays. My welding bays, the heart of our precision work. The numbers didn't lie. She'd already siphoned off enough to buy a condo in South Beach. My hands clenched, not shaking but steady with a cold fury. This wasn't incompetence. It was theft, a calculated heist dressed up as reform. I called Emma. "You see the files?" she asked, her voice low, urgent. "She's killing us, Daniel." I nodded, though she couldn't see. "Keep digging, pup," I said. "Send everything to Henry." Nathan texted next. Found a buyer's name, linked to Olivia's college buddy. The conspiracy unfolded like a bad movie, but I wasn't surprised. Olivia's arrogance, her belief she could gut the company without anyone noticing, was her fatal flaw. My mind raced, piecing it together. George's retirement hadn't been voluntary. She'd pushed him out, banking on his trust to cover her tracks. The senior team, Ishin team, me, Emma, Nathan, Pete, weren't collateral damage. We were threats, the ones who knew the company's soul. She'd targeted us to silence the truth. My chest burned, a mix of rage and clarity. I'd underestimated her, but not anymore. I stood, the chair scraping the floor. The kitchen felt smaller, the air charged. This wasn't just about my bra or my pride. It was about a legacy, about the people who'd poured their lives into Mason Industries. Olivia thought she'd won, but she'd misread me. I wasn't a pawn to be swept off the board. I'd fight, not with fists, but with evidence, with the truth she couldn't bury. Lunch with William would be my next move, but first I needed to set a trap. The morning sun burned through the haze as I steered my truck toward a diner off I-70, my knuckles tight on the wheel. I'm Daniel Carter, 55, and the truth about Olivia's scheme, her looting of Mason Industries, lit a fire in my gut, not wild but controlled, like a welder's torch. I wasn't after revenge. I wanted justice, and today I'd lay the snare to bring her down. My lunch with William Crane, 65, was no casual meetup. It was the first move in a chess game Olivia, 30, didn't know she was playing. I walked into the diner, the smell of bacon and burnt toast hitting me. William waited in a corner booth, his silver hair catching the light. "You look like a man with a plan," he said, sliding a menu aside. I sat, keeping my voice low. "Apex precision, custom components, high margin. You in?" His eyes sharpened. "If you're running it, yeah." We shook hands, sealing a partnership to target the niche Olivia had abandoned. I handed him a USB drive, client lists, supplier contacts, all legally mine. "Start with these," I said. He nodded, pocketing it. Back home, I called Emma, 48, and Nathan, 50, my exiled allies. "Meet me at Henry's office," I told them. Henry Walsh, 60, my lawyer, had a conference room ready. Emma arrived with a laptop, her face grim. "Livia's selling the last presses next week," and she said, showing me an encrypted email from a whistleblower on the floor. Nathan added, "The buyer's a front, traces to her Miami account." I leaned back, a grim satisfaction settling in. Their evidence was dynamite, but I needed Olivia to light the fuse. I crafted an email to her, vague but baiting. "Heard about the equipment sales. Happy to consult on transition. Name a time." I hit send, knowing she'd bite, she'd want to gloat or sniff out what I knew. Sure enough, her reply came fast. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office." I didn't smile. I forwarded it to Henry, who was prepping a demand letter for my severance, $300,000 per the contract George, 72, had signed. "Bring the files," I told Emma. "We're walking in loaded." To tighten the trap, I contacted a reporter at the Indy Star, a guy I'd met at a charity golf outing. "Got a tip on corporate fraud," I said, keeping it anonymous. "Check Mason Industries auctions. Follow the money." He promised to dig. I hung up, my pulse steady but fierce. Olivia thought she'd silenced us, but she'd underestimated the network I'd built. Decades of handshakes, favors, trust. As night fell, I sat on my porch, a cold beer untouched. The stars were sharp, indifferent. My mind churned, not with doubt, but with the weight of what I was unleashing. This wasn't just about me, it was for Emma, Nathan, Pete, the workers still clocking in, unaware their jobs were next. Olivia's greed had turned Mason Industries into a house of cards, and I was ready to pull the one that'd bring it down. I stood, the porch boards creaking. Tomorrow, I'd face her not as the man she fired, but as the one holding the match. She'd see my hand too late, and when she did, the game would be mine. The morning sun burned through the haze as I steered my truck toward a diner off I-70, my knuckles tight on the wheel. I'm Daniel Carter, 55, and the truth about Olivia's scheme, her looting of Mason Industries, lit a fire in my gut, not wild but controlled, like a welder's torch. I wasn't after revenge. I wanted justice, and today I lay the snare to bring her down. My lunch with William Crane, 65, was no casual meetup. It was the first move in a chess game Olivia, 30, didn't know she was playing. I walked into the diner, the smell of bacon and burnt toast hitting me. William waited in a corner booth, his silver hair catching the light. "You look like a man with a bike." "Oh, they both play hen," he said, sliding a menu aside. I sat, keeping my voice low. "Apex precision. Custom components. High margin. You in?" His eyes sharpened. "If you're running it, yeah." We shook hands, sealing a partnership to target the niche Olivia had abandoned. I handed him a USB drive, client lists, supplier contacts, all legally mine. Start with these, I said. He nodded, pocketing it. Back home, I called Emma, 48, and Nathan, 50, my exiled allies. Meet me at Henry's office, I told them. Henry Walsh, 60, my lawyer, had a conference room ready. Emma arrived with a laptop, her face grim. Olivia's selling the last presses next week, and she said, showing me an encrypted email from a whistleblower on the floor. Nathan added, the buyer's a front, traces to her Miami account. I leaned back, a grim satisfaction settling in. Their evidence was dynamite, but I needed Olivia to light the fuse. I crafted an email to her, vague but baiting. Heard about the equipment sales. Happy to consult on transition. Name a time. I hit send knowing she'd bite. She'd want to gloat or sniff out what I knew. Sure enough, her reply came fast. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. My office. I didn't smile. I forwarded it to Henry, who was prepping a demand letter for my severance. $300,000 per the contract George, 72, had signed. Bring the files, I told Emma. We're walking in loaded. To tighten the trap, I contacted a reporter at the Indy Star, a guy I'd met at a charity golf outing. Got a tip on corporate fraud, I said, keeping it anonymous. Check Mason Industries auctions. Follow the money. He promised to dig. I hung up, my pulse steady but fierce. Olivia thought she'd silenced us, but she'd underestimated the network I'd built. Decades of handshakes, favors, trust. As night fell, I sat on my porch, a cold beer untouched. The stars were sharp, indifferent. My mind churned, not with doubt, but with the weight of what I was unleashing. This wasn't just about me. It was for Emma, Nathan, Pete, the workers still clocking in, unaware their jobs were next. Olivia's greed had turned Mason Industries into a house of cards, and I was ready to pull the one that'd bring it down. I stood, the porch boards creaking. Tomorrow I'd face her, not as the man she fired, but as the one holding the match. She'd see my hand too late, and when she did, the game would be mine. The boardroom's sterile hum faded as I stepped into the Indianapolis twilight, the weight of victory heavy on my shoulders. I'm Daniel Carter, 55, and Olivia's downfall, her schemes gutted, her authority stripped, should have felt like a win, but it didn't. The fight had cost too much, carved too deep. Mason Industries was safe, merged with apex precision under my lead. But the scars of betrayal lingered, jagged and raw. It was time to sever the final tie, to walk away clean. I found George, 72, in his old office, the one he'd filled with photos of the factory's early days. He sat behind his desk, staring at a faded picture of him and his wife, his hands trembling. The man who'd given me a chance 15 years ago looked smaller now, diminished by his daughter's greed. I should have stopped her, he said, voice rough, eyes red. I leaned against the door frame, my throat tight. Part of me wanted to curse him for letting Olivia, 30, run wild, but I saw the pain in his slumped shoulders. He'd lost more than a company, he'd lost his legacy. No need to rehash it, I said, my tone flat but firm. It's done. George looked up, searching my face. You'll rebuild it, Daniel, better than I did. I didn't answer. His faith, once a lifeline, now felt like a burden. I'd fought for the workers, for the truth, but not for him, not anymore. Don't call me, I added, the words cutting the air like a blade. We're square. His nod was slow, resigned, and I turned away, leaving him with his ghosts. Outside, the parking lot stretched empty. My truck a lone sentinel under a sodium lamp. I climbed in, the leather seat creaking, and let the silence settle. My hands rested on the wheel, steady but heavy, carrying the weight of a life redefined. I'd won, sure, Olivia was gone. Her Miami dreams funded by a meager settlement, her name mud in the industry. But victory tasted like ash. I wasn't the man who'd started this fight, full of fire and purpose. That man had burned out somewhere between the evidence and the boardroom. I drove, the city lights blurring into streaks. My mind drifted to Emma, 48, and Nathan, 50, already planning the new factory's layout. They'd carry on, and I'd lead them. But this chapter, with George, with Mason Industries as I'd known it, was over. I didn't need apologies or closure. I needed distance, a clean break from the past that had shaped me and nearly broken me. At home, I stood in my garage, the air thick with sawdust and motor oil. A toolbox sat open, tools gleaming like old friends. I picked up a wrench, its weight familiar, grounding. This was who I was, Daniel Carter, a man who fixed things, who built things, not a victim, not a pawn. Olivia had tried to erase me and George had failed to stop her, but I'd reclaimed my name, my worth. I set the wrench down, the clink echoing. The fight was over, the ties cut. I'd walk into tomorrow with my head high, no regrets, no glances back. The road ahead was mine, and I'd pave it myself. Dawn broke over Indianapolis, painting my garage in hues of gold as I tightened a bolt on an old carburetor. I'm Daniel Carter, 55 and 6 months after severing ties with Mason Industries. I'm not the man who fought Olivia's betrayal. That fire forged me anew, and now I stand in the quiet of my own making, building a life that's mine, flawed, hard-won, but true. Apex Precision, our new venture, hums with purpose, and I'm finding peace in the work, the sweat, the steady rhythm of starting over. The factory, a converted warehouse on the city's east side, is my new battleground. I walk its floor daily. The clang of metal and whir of machines, a song I know by heart. Emma, 48, oversees quality, her sharp eyes catching flaws no one else sees. Nathan, 50, sketches designs, his pencil dancing across paper before it hits the CAD software. We're a small crew, but tight, bound by shared scars and a hunger to prove ourselves. Last week, we landed a contract with a Midwest auto supplier, a deal Olivia never could have closed. It's not glory, it's progress, one job at a time. At home, I've carved out a sanctuary. My backyard, once a patch of dirt, now holds a sapling maple planted where my late wife would have wanted it. I water it evenings, the hose's soft hiss blending with cicadas. It's a small act, but it grounds me, a promise to keep growing. On my workbench, a letter from a client sits, pinned under a socket wrench. Thanks for saving our line, it reads, simple words that hit harder than any bonus. They remind me I'm not just surviving, I'm shaping something real. The turmoil of Olivia's betrayal, George's failure, lingers like a faint bruise, but it doesn't rule me. I've let go of the need for vengeance or vindication. My fight was never about them. It was about the people who clock in every day, who trust me to lead. I see it in the new hires, kids fresh from trade school, learning to run a lathe under Nathan's gruff guidance. I see it in Emma, laughing over coffee, her old spark back. This is my legacy now, not Mason Industries, but Apex, built on grit and respect. Nights are quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned. I sit on my porch, a cold soda in hand, watching the stars over the city. The anger's gone, replaced by a steady calm. I don't need anyone's approval, not George's, not the industry's. I've got my hands, my team, a purpose that wakes me before the alarm. Life's not perfect. Bills stack up, machines break, doubts creep in, but it's mine and that's enough. I wonder, though, about others who face their own betrayals. How do you rebuild when the ground's pulled out from under you? What keeps you going when the fight's over and the silence sets in? I'm sharing my story not for pity, but to ask, what's your way forward? Drop a comment, tell me how you rose from your own ashes. Maybe we'll find we're not so different. All of us carving paths through the wreckage, building something new.